The plan is to, before opening it to the audience, of course, to have two individuals who will be responding or discussing Dr. Subha's presentation. The first individual I would like to invite is Dr. Rajendra Padwe, who is the director of the Tata Memorial Center, one of the leading I would say a rare surgeon who has done research in very fundamental issues, well known for his work in breast cancer, especially the timing of breast cancer surgery, also an alumnus of this institution. So I will hand over the mic now to Dr. Badwe to respond.
I must express as it is an ethical norm to declare the conflict of interest, and I am one of the investigators in the study that has been shown just now, so that's a major conflict of interest. And it would have been ethically sound if our dear guest had also declared his conflict of interest, that he has been the treasurer of Papua New Guinea Society of Cytopathology and presently is the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee for the Papua New Guinea Cytopathology Society. Let's come to the study that we looked at, and I have a few comments related to that. The study was presented to the NIH for an R01 grant. We got that R01 grant. Prior to that, there was a review by ICMR looking at feasibility of pap smear in India, and there is a publication from Usha Luthra in DMJ stating that it is not feasible to have pap smear being implemented across the country. The third implication is that the OHRP, when they looked at, Dr. Subha mentioned about 2012 and 2015, about the ethics of conducting the test as well as falsification of data, and it didn't conclude as to what was the finality of that investigation. Both the investigations have concluded from OHRP saying that there is neither any falsification of data, because all the data was put forth, it is available at the NIH site as the response to these queries. And there is no unethical conduct as far as the conduct of trial is concerned. Finally, when we looked at the results show a 31% reduction in deaths related to cervical cancer and a 9% reduction in all-cause mortality. I would challenge anybody to look at the results of any screening trial that has ever been published, randomized screening trial that has ever shown a reduction in all-cause mortality as well as cause-specific mortality. This is the first and the only trial. This was presented as a plenary session talk at ASCO. My colleague, Dr. Shastri, made that presentation. ASCO, for your information, receives about 30,000 abstracts for their meeting. About 3 or 4 are selected for plenary. This was one of those 3 or 4 out of 30,000. We received a standing ovation from more than 35,000 oncologists across the globe for a fantastically run trial saving lives. When implemented in India itself, would save 22,000 lives annually for women of India. If implemented anywhere else globally, for developing world, would save 78,000 lives annually. And this was implementable by healthcare workers who were 10th pass. 10th pass workers trained for 2 months. Solid results. The only robust evidence for saving of lives was screening of cervical cancer. both those done, what was remarkable is that after the presentation, in the press interaction, the scribes from US had this very remarkable suggestion that there are parts of US where PAP is not implementable. This is an excellent alternative for the United States. Having said all that, when it comes to the trial results, the day we had the difference emerging, reaching statistical significance, this data was shared with Department of Health, Union Government of India, Department of Health, Maharashtra State, and as we talk, 15 states have adopted VIA. All the ASHA workers and health workers have been trained, and we already have 15 states in India implementing VIA for cervical cancer screening. The ground level practices for cervical cancer screening did not exist. There was no cervical cancer screening prior to 1997, 1999. And you might say that the end point of a study is that we did see a slide showing that from 24-25, the incidence of cervical cancer has reduced to 6 per 100,000 in United States. And in Vietnam, it has reduced from 25-26 to 11. Both have been credited to cervical cancer screening by pap smear. I'm not saying that pap smear will not do it, but I want you to look at data from Bombay Cancer Registry. We have no pap smear, we have no VIA when this data came in, we have no screening, we have no prevention. The data for cervical cancer incidence in Mumbai in year 1972 stands at 27 per 100,000 per year. The data for cervical cancer, as I got it day before yesterday from the Bombay Cancer Registry, stands at 8 per 100,000. My suggestion that reduction from 27 or 26 to 8 without doing anything. There is a reduction naturally happening with improved personal hygiene. Our Muslim brethren, whether in Mumbai or in Barshi the incidence still stands at 28 per 100,000. But the Muslims in Mumbai have an incidence which is 4 per 100,000. Muslims in Barshi have an incidence which is 4 per 100,000. We are looking at personal hygiene. My interaction and suggestion to the Union Health Minister is provide running water, good sanitation and personal hygiene to every individual in rural India where it is needed. Half the diseases will be gone. Had HPV vaccination being introduced 20 years ago, we would have credited HPV vaccine. Why are we spending money? Till the time prevention happens, we may have to do something. Let's do it low cost. This is doable, shown to be implementable, implemented, we'll have results. We already have results of reduction from 26 to 8. At 8 per 100,000, disease does not require preventive and screening strategy. Screening is required for common diseases. If I were to ask in Bhuleshwar, should I be looking for tiger? It is a foolish exercise. There are many other common diseases for which we need to look at for screening purposes. But the trial was performed essentially to see the efficacy and its implementability in rural India, where the routine thing like VIA would be taken care of without any problems. problem created, that we may go to population, create that there is something not right, detected. Presently, every state government is sold a hub and spoke model for primary care, for tertiary care, and every spoke in every district hospital will be able to take care of all the patients who are detected like this. I don't see any reason why efficacy of one procedure needs to be coupled with deprecating some other procedure. We don't need to. Let there be a cafeteria choice, and people can take. Somebody wants to have absolutely, I have no problem at all about it. Somebody wants to have VIA, that's absolutely fine. You want to have HPV vaccine, but let there be knowledge that what each of them mean, what they cost, and what is the present perception of risk. It can't be that one of the greatest film actresses says that I need to have bilateral mastectomy, that every woman should have bilateral mastectomy. That's not right. Perception of risk is required, reality of risk perception, and reality of risk perception is that the incidence of cervical cancer in city of Mumbai, the same is true for city of Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai and Kolkata. It's under 10. Incidence of cervical cancer less than 10 per 100,000. How different is it compared to 6 in the United States? Without doing anything. You have not spent any money. Just plain, simple, personal hygiene. My advice would be that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Badwe. I would request you to wait here because I suspect there will be responses in the question and answer session. But before we do that, I would now like to invite our second discussant, Dr. Amar Jasani. Amar is, I don't know how to describe him, he's a doctor, but he gave up medicine some time back, and I think it did a good job at that. It was a good step. Amar is now into ethics. He is now the editor of the Indian Journal of Medical Ethics. He teaches ethics in many institutions in India abroad. And I would now like to request Amar to respond, following which we'll open it for discussion.
Thank you very much. I'm here as an editor of the journal where Dr. Eric Suba's paper was published in 2014. And I would like to discuss more in detail about what were the considerations that led to the publication and many other issues related to the points that he has raised here. But before I go on to that, I must declare that I once upon a time, for 1.5 years, that is between 2006 and 2007, I sat on the ethics committee of the Tata Memorial Center. And it was a really great experience for me. This is the institution which has been doing a massive amount of pioneering cancer research in India. And as a member of the ethics committee, we had to work really hard. I haven't seen the ethics committee so far. And I have been with Sri Chitra, I have been with the Nizam Institution, ethics committees and all the other big biomedical institutions. But here was the institutions where sometimes we had to sit every 15 days. And in one sitting, we had to tackle more than 20 agenda items and large number of clinical trials and the amendments in clinical trials and all. So I learned quite a lot. This was also the period when the Bombay trial was on. The only thing that I can say that although I knew the trial was on, because in Indian Journal of Medical Ethics, I think the first time a comment on this was published by Sandhya Srinivasan in 2003 or 4, and there was some discussion on that. However, I never had an opportunity to get the protocol to review and understand, what were the exact issues. I came to know more about it after Dr. Suba's article was published in Indian Journal of Medical Ethics. So that is, I think, a background in my declaration. One important part of today's meeting, which I feel really very proud of as a person who is in the field of bioethics, is that I think for us in India, we are now setting a new tradition where we can sit together and discuss our own research and debate and deliberate. I think debating and deliberating is fundamental to the development of ethics. If you see the way the bioethics has developed in USA, and you read American medical journals, you'll find that the doctors and scientists come forward reviewing and critiquing each other's paper. A number of large clinical trials which have been debated, sometimes very sharply, more sharply than what we have been doing on the subject. And yet, nobody getting any kind of witch hunting on anybody, or hanging anybody and saying that, well, you get out of this. There is a lot of respect for good work people are doing. And yet, when we are doing research, we do follow certain paths which may run into controversy. So I don't think we are belittling any scientist or science here, but we are trying to learn from what we are doing. And I think that is a good interactive method, or what they call Socratic method of learning ethics. And if this tradition strengthens in coming time in India, I'm sure we will be doing more introspection and interacting with each other in a very good critical manner. That is the role of the journal too. And the medical journals in India, unlike, say, when you read the Lancet, where Lancet editor can make a comment about India, slashing health budget and then coming out with his own comment, or India's, the way India looks at the sexual assault and rape and other things. Well, why Indian medical journals are not able to reflect on these issues and say that what is the role of medicine and health system in this kind of thing? So that way I feel as an Indian Journal of Medical Ethics, we were quite keen on getting into the issues where some critical questions are asked. Dr. Subha's paper required, I think it went on for peer review for almost 9 months. He was very, very patient with that. And there were several people who did the peer review of the journal, including one person who said that it should be rejected. And I remember meeting that person in Geneva in a World Health Organization's meeting, and I asked that, why do you think that he should be rejected? He said, no, issues are very correct, what is raised there. But the major problem was that this was the research which may perhaps help a large number of women. VIA, the visual inspection with acetic acid, if that can be universalized, used as a very cheap tool for detecting precancerous lesions, then it will have a very tremendous impact. And I agreed. I said, yes, there is nobody is saying that the intentions were bad. Intentions were excellent. If you look at Tuskegee trial, when it was started, those of you who have come to, say, some of my ethics training sessions, we show a film called, Miss Eva's Boys, where the whole thing starts with an excellent commitment, saying that we want to prove that the black people suffer from the syphilis in the same way as the white people. And they were fighting ideologically and ideally against racism. Like, doctors were highly committed and they were very sensitive to the black people. And yet, at the end of 40 years, the world was shocked that these are the same good doctors with so much of sensitivity for black people had done a study which allowed the black people to develop syphilis and die. I think this is a crux of the issue for me as far as the bioethics is concerned, that this could happen to anybody, any scientist. So here is also that the reviewer who said that yes, they've had a very good intention, so I do agree. I also recollected at that time, and I used that case study quite a lot in my teaching, again, concerning carcinoma cervix, done in India with Indian government funding. This was a study done in, from 1975 to 1990, where they wanted to understand the natural history of the cervical cancer, to understand that which are the precancerous lesions convert into the carcinoma in situ. And they recruited more than 1,000 women and they observed them without giving any intervention for 6 years to understand how many of them who are having, precancerous lesions, they convert into the carcinoma in situ. That also had some amount of discussion. Unfortunately, it did not raise as much as it has done here. As far as Dr. Suba's persistence, and he came to the National Bioethics Conference in 2014 December, and he has come again and delivered this lecture, so I think we are having more discussion on the subject. But that research was also conducted with a huge devotion, saying that if we find out which are the lesions which will convert into the carcinoma situ more, then we'll be able to conserve resources by intervening in those women where those lesions are going to convert into carcinoma early. So this is how entire thing was conceptualized. So I would not go into the issue of intent. Intent were excellent. Do this intent really translate into a good ethics or not? I think that is the debate as far as I'm concerned. And I find that there was a problem. You can't recruit women and observe them for 6 years to find out whether they convert into carcinoma situ or not. Just as the Tuskegee trial, you cannot recruit black people to find out, how, syphilis plays out for the coming time. And the end result is either death or, something. That was what was in syphilis, and here the end result was development of carcinoma in situ when they were intervened. Now, this issue has certain connection with this trial also, where Dr. Suba kept saying that 150,000 women were provided no intervention. That means for 15 years, or for whatever the length of trial, I mean, at the 3 different centers, the lengths were different, where the no intervention arm were not screened at all. When the screening has been definitely, regarded in the scientific world as the requirement. I think this is an area that really moved me, and that's how we went ahead and published this paper. And I'm very happy that this kind of debate has taken place. The last thing that I wanted to put before you can have a larger discussion is that was this kind of study possible ever, say, in the United States? I would like to ask, because I'm not an oncologist. My own technical understanding is very, very low. And Dr. Bhatt has said that there are big black pockets in USA where even pap smear is not available, and it is not a standard. So would they have done, with NIH funding, because money came, both NIH and Gates Foundation was from the US, would they have been permitted to conduct this study in the USA, because there are some pockets where the standard of care was not pap smear at all? I would say no. It wouldn't have happened there. They wouldn't have allowed. Because they know that you cannot sacrifice some people with good intent now in order to do good for the millions of women later on. This is what happened in the 1975 to 1990 trial, where women were having the precancerous lesions, they converted into carcinoma in situ. This is not allowed because they are under your care. They are part of as a participants in the research, and you have a higher ethical obligations for them as compared to in the normal clinical practice. So they would not have allowed that. They would not have allowed the black people, black women who are not having pap smear to be observed for 15 years to find out, what is the better, VIA or. So this perhaps can also be looked at as a project where some kind of ethics dumping took place or double standard by the funders. I think that's how Dr. Suba's focus. So these are US funded trials, and he has been demanding in the US that US should acknowledge this, that they did something wrong by supporting it, and should apologize in the same way, right, as they did to the Tuskegee participants, and should make the funding to ensure that all these women who were not screened, money is made available for screening and providing intervention so that you know, they really get what they should have got under the trial. I think these are the key issues around which the most of the ethical debate on this subject is coming. There are a lot of other technical aspects and a lot of good achievements, as I said, there, and they are not to be belittled. I think they will be used historically in coming time as you know, 1975-90 trial of natural history of carcinoma cervix had really helped in a big way in setting up you know, the whole program on the carcinoma cervix in India. Same way, I'm sure a lot of women will ultimately benefit from it, but those who really participated and who were denied the care, I think we need to look at them and also see that if there were real you know, errors in terms of ethics committed during the trial. Thank you.
Thank you, Amar. We would like to now open this out for debate and discussion. But before I do that, yeah, sure, we'll come to you. Can I ask the people on the dais, would you like to briefly respond to the points made by the others? Is there, would you like to do that? Okay.
Dr. Badwe, thank you for coming today. And I've just got a couple of questions. Your study, was it a study of downstaging compared to no downstaging, or screening compared to no screening?
The study had the endpoint of mortality reduction. Downstaging was a surrogate marker to be proven that we may look for mortality. But the study was aimed at reducing mortality related to cervical cancer. That was the endpoint.
So it was a downstaging study?
It was not a downstaging study. Downstaging was a necessary surrogate marker to look for mortality. The endpoint of the study was reduction in mortality. The aim of the study was reduction in mortality.
Thank you. My next question is,
I have a request. Could you just introduce yourself for the audience, and then, of course, yeah. Yeah, sure. There are two mics there.
My name is Sudeep Gupta, and I'm a medical oncologist at Tata. I just need to respond to you. You know, you repeatedly characterize the test as a downstaging test. There is nothing about any test that characterizes it as either downstaging or screening. Mammography can be in different contexts used either as downstaging or as screening. It is the endpoints of the study that you were alluding to, and as Dr. Badwe rightly pointed out, the primary endpoint of the study was reduction in cervical cancer mortality. So you cannot characterize a test as a downstaging test.
well, then my follow-up question is, how do you explain the extraordinarily low disease detection rates for your intervention?
Because the
precancerous detection was not the endpoint. 75% of CIN1 and CIN2 are reversible. They disappear over a period of time. The primary goal is to reduce mortality. That's it. That has been proven beyond doubt. Statistical significance, reduction in cause-specific mortality, reduction in all-cause mortality. There is no such robust evidence for pap smear.
Thank you very much for coming all the way to tell us what we need. Could we have that slide which you kept on repeatedly putting up, I think 20 times in your presentation? Can I see it once again, please? Which showed that in one of my studies, the detection rate was higher as compared to the second study, right? That's the one. Thank you. Thank you. That's the one. Yes. I think your representation of that particular slide is either ill-informed or mischievously misrepresenting. Because it very clearly says in the methodology of both those studies, yes, the mic is on. It very clearly says in the methodology of those two studies, the first one is a hospital-based study. The hospital is the preventive oncology clinic where we get referrals. The second one is a community-based study. For the audience, I'll just explain. If I were to take a team of people in a community to find out how many cases of tuberculosis we have in this community, the answer would be 5 out of 1,000, 2 out of 1,000 or something like that. But if I were to do the same thing in the TB OPD of this hospital, how much would that be? It would be much higher. And that is explained in the methodology. I think you are purposely, mischievously been misrepresenting it all the time. I'm not finished. I'm not finished. I would, sir, come to you, and it's a journal of medical ethics. And pardon my saying so, any journal, and all the more a journal of medical ethics, should have looked into a contentious paper which you said was reviewed for 9 months, and then decided to invite the authors of the publications where allegations are being made to respond side by side with those so that people get a correct view, not just one point of view. Will you agree with that? And you didn't do it. Thank you very much.
Dr. Shastri. It's on? Thank you for clarifying that. So you're saying that these numbers, 0.02%, those are the actual benchmarks for Mumbai. Thank you for clarifying that. Then my next question for Dr. Shastri and Dr. Badwe. In 2007, The Lancet published the results of the Tamil Nadu study, showing that one round of VIA apparently caused 25% reductions in mortality and incidence. Why didn't you stop your study at that point?
I think we need to reiterate what medical literature and how learning takes place. You pick up any large intervention that has changed clinical practice, any large intervention that has changed clinical practice, it comes in one trial. If it is robust enough, then it is implemented. But if not, it needs to be reproduced at least in one more trial before it is implemented as a routine practice. We had finished our intervention by then. It was only a routine follow-up that was happening. And that's the reason why it was not done. I repeat again, the day the second trial showed a difference, the Union Health Ministry, the State Health Ministry were informed, and as we talk, more than 15 states have implemented VIA, and all of them are getting VIA as a routine screening in rural parts of India where it is required. I again repeat, cervical cancer screening in cities of India is redundant. With an incidence of 8 per 100,000, it is redundant.
Okay, so we are going to open this out to the audience now. Amar, yeah, okay.
I would also like to
Okay, Dr. Shastri, one second. Let Amar respond.
Both Dr. Badwe and me.
Sorry?
The question was directed to both Dr. Badwe and me. I think I have business to answer. I would also like to tell the audience that the OHRP, what Dr. Suba has been continuously talking about, was an investigation instigated by Dr. Suba. They investigated us for almost 6 months, and it's there on their website. It's a US government transparent website that puts everything up on the website. What are their determinations? What actions have been taken? What, at the end of the investigation, did they find? Dr. Suba never talks about that, what they found at the end of the investigation. He said that they never told him that. They are there on the website. You just go and give a search for OHRP, and you will find what are the determinations on the website. There. The question of research integrity, which Dr. Suba talked about, and there was an investigation on research integrity also on this trial. And I must tell you that they not only exonerated us, but they invited one of us for a meeting of the research integrity in the US to discuss these kind of cultural, multi-country cultural issues related to ethics and related to research integrity out there. So they value our contributions to science. 3, I would like to inform you, Dr. Suba, and I'm sure you know it already, despite your cytology program that you set up in Vietnam. The government of Vietnam today, and please search that on the web too, is taking up VIA screening for the population. Thank you.
Thank you. Amar, you wanted to respond?
Just a very brief response to how the debate on the subject in Indian Journal of Medical Ethics has taken place. I think all of you, who are part of this study had quite a lot of opportunities to write in the journal. And if you go on the pages of the Indian Journal of Medical Ethics, you'll find that all the rebuttals that have come so far have been very scrupulously published. In addition to that, we also made a lot of efforts to encourage debate by inviting both national as well as international bioethics experts to write on the subject. I think you'll find their papers, including Professor Ruth Macklin, who is one of the topmost bioethicists in the USA, her views on the trial and the debates on the subject. The only humble request that I would like to make, and many of you who read medical literature, particularly British Medical Journal, would be aware that there have been a lot of debate about what is called data sharing, and ensuring that when we do clinical trial, we make anonymized data available to the larger number of experts to reanalyze and relook at it. There was a very good debate and discussion that came in BMJ, where they went back to the study 329, where there was an anti-psychiatry drug, and they relooked at the data of the clinical trials, and they found that the way data were analyzed and published, there were a lot of problems. So this is a live debate and live discussion in the bioethics as well as medical science, that what we are doing as scientists, we may always not be completely unbiased. You can definitely say that as a bioethicist, we are not unbiased people. Our job is to pass a judgment, to say what is right and wrong. And they may also recognize a lot of gray area between right and wrong. But we do stick our neck out and say that there is some problem here. And we may sometimes be wrong. We may be, criticized, so there's no doubt. I mean, in philosophy, and bioethics is a discipline of philosophy, where criticizing in the sharpest term is very much acceptable. I think in medicine, we are not so tolerant to criticism. If you read in Economic and Political Weekly, I remember Professor Richard Kesh, who took, I think, a couple of ethics training sessions in Tata Memorial Hospital when I was the member of the ethics committee. When I gave him to read Economic and Political Weekly, he said, "My God, I have never seen this kind of discussion where the attacks on each other, were so sharp." Because the differences in the policies, economics and all, they are sharply debated. But medicine doesn't do it to that extent, and we are very polite with each other. But in bioethics, we are quite used to. So my suggestion would be that if you would like to get out of the controversy, be more transparent. Make your data available to more experts who come with a good reanalysis plan, and look at them. Because when we claim that we are the great and our data are good, we need to have more confirmation being done. I think this is a trend that is emerging at international level, and it is going to engulf us in coming time. It may take, we can resist it for some time through whatever effort, but sooner or later, science will have to become more transparent and more engaging with the public than it has been in the past.
Okay, so we have lots of hands. I have a request. So firstly, identify yourself, be brief, try not to repeat what has already been said, and we'll try and make it as representative as possible. Dr. Mitra, just before you, I think he's been raising a hand, so just give him an opportunity.
So Dr. Subha, in India we have a culture that guest is the god. So Atithi Devo Bhav, so you are the god for us as a guest. But let me tell you, when you were making your presentation, I had a comment that you sounded more like a lawyer who is vociferously trying to save a client rather than presenting the science. Because see what happens, when you say that the plot is thickening, it is sounding like a Hollywood blockbuster rather than science. So that is one, because what happens when scientists the cap of activist, then their credibility goes down. And therefore, we have to be very careful in our public appearance. That is one. And second thing, I have a serious objection when you compare.
Okay, so let's please hear him out. Let's please hear him out.
Let me present the question to you. The question is that you have repeatedly said that the controlled arm women were allowed to die. I have a serious objection to that. The reason is that in a population where this study was going on, where one arm was receiving intervention, the other arm was a control arm, the third group was who were not part of the study. And let me tell you, the control arm is an active surveillance arm. It is not an arm where women are allowed to die like the real world who are outside the study. That is number one. Number two, you have been always comparing the non-screen group with the smoking, that it is as unethical as running a smoking versus no smoking. That means you are saying that non-screened women were akin to the smoking, which is incorrect, because fatality rate of smoking is 1 in 3.
Can you just try and be a little, there are lots of hands, lots of people,
Correct.
so
your
please try and conclude.
Your comparison is malicious. The reason is that only in the non-screen group, 8 out of 100,000 would have got cancer. But in smoking, 1 in 3 would die because of smoking. Even Tuskegee was an arm where the patients were being accrued, and this arm, they are healthy women. And what I will end with, Mahatma Gandhi said, if you want to find a solution, go and live where the problem is. We know the problem better and we know how to solve it. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Mitra. Yeah.
Dr. Jasani said that watching women getting cervical cancer in black women was unethical. This is exactly what is happening today with TCIs in breast cancer. Because we don't know which breast cancer will become a real cancer. TCIs is in situ cancer, as you heard. We don't know which in situ will actually become a real cancer. So what Dr. Dasani said was unethical between 1965 and 90, whatever, is happening in breast cancer today, in the enlightened day of today, because there is a serious problem. Because if you treat every TCIS, you are unnecessarily causing a mastectomy, unnecessarily giving radiotherapy, unnecessarily making the patient a cancer patient. So what Dr. Dasani said is unethical. Is happening today's enlightened, transparent society in breast cancer.
Okay, let's have, yeah, Tina.
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate GSMC for this wonderful interaction. I'm Dr. Reena Vani. I'm a professor of obstetrics and gynecology, a woman dealing with women, and I'm also a founder member of the Cooper Hospital Bioethics Unit and a sister concern of the same thing. So I'm representing both sides. There are no sides here. What I'd like to say, first of all, I'd like to congratulate Dr. Badwe on putting it in a nutshell. He has pointed out the conflict of interest over here. It is a question of perspective. A pathologist will always want to praise the pap smear because he thinks that's his baby. Dr. Shastri has pioneered VIA. He thinks it's very good. That's something he has pioneered, and he was praised in Mumbai Mirror for making vinegar save women. As a gynecologist, I would like to also say that Dr. Badwe said we need not screen in Mumbai. I would not agree with him on that. I feel that this reduction to 8 is not only because of personal hygiene, it is because of increased awareness, opportunistic screening. I'm in the public healthcare system, and I feel what you said, sir, about cafeteria approach is absolutely right. We have to make awareness, and we have to make the methods available to women. So I think today there is no winner or loser in today's debate. I think I am very happy we have focused on this issue, and we have to make screening available to women. And the very fact that Dr. Shastri's trial was ratified, rigorously grilled, and gone across by many, many international organizations, I would say we have to give him credit for that. And we do have to see that the perspective of how the data is presented makes a huge difference. So I think all of us should keep our minds open and take things with a pinch of salt and do not get carried away when people say zombie argument. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, I'm Dr. Jayashree Joshi, and I'm very much interested in preventing cervical cancer. One technical point I just wanted to bring to the notice of Dr. Subha, that if we wanted to show any effect at all of VIA and had carried out the study in rural India, where pap smears are not available, it would not have been possible. I think only because it was conducted in Mumbai and with such rigorousness, they were able to follow up. Otherwise, when you don't have a follow-up, you can't come to conclusions. And that is the reason why VIA has become available to women who have no screening method at all.
2 or 3 questions. We need to wind up in about 5 to 10 minutes at the max. We are already beyond time. So let's, yeah, okay.
Dr. Subha, this is Priyanka from Hindustan Times. So we wanted to understand, do you think implementing of the VIA testing that India is doing now will be incorrect according to the assumptions that you have about the study?
Could you repeat that?
I'm asking that the implementation, India is implementing the VIA program now in 15 states, as Dr. Badwe has already said. Is that incorrect, or do you think that is wrong, depending on the results of the study?
Okay, suggestion that we take some of the questions and then we give you a few minutes at the end to respond, because we need to try and wind this up in the next 10 minutes. Anybody from yeah, okay.
My name is Pramesh. I'm a thoracic surgeon, far removed from cervical cancer. But again, declaring my conflict of interest, I work at the Tata Memorial Hospital, which actually conducted the study. Good presentation. Unfortunately, sounded more like a Michael Moore movie, if you've seen Fahrenheit 9/11. Very biased in its interpretation. 3 main reasons why I feel so. I think your insistence on having detection of precancerous lesions as an endpoint by itself is fundamentally flawed if you understand the research methodology that goes into screening trials. The only valid endpoint that you can look at in a screening trial, it's not survival, it's not progression-free survival, is mortality. It's a fundamental basis of any screening trial, and I'm disappointed that somebody who's so actively interested in cervical screening has been unable to understand that. Second, if you look at the ICMR report of in the 80s, which looked at the feasibility of doing pap smear in India, the conclusions by an unbiased Indian Council of Medical Research, Government of India collaboration was that if you were to multiply the number of existing cytologists in India by 25-fold, you would still be able to screen only 1/4 of India's women, and that too once in a lifetime. Clearly saying that it's practically impossible to implement in a country like India. And proof of principle by doing it in a small city in Vietnam doesn't really translate. I think India is slightly bigger than Vietnam by population. Finally, my point about cost effectiveness. If you had read through our editorial or our response in the IJME, the Harvard School of Public Health conducted a cost-effective analysis comparing pap smear, VIA, and HPV DNA testing. The cost per life saved of VIA was $460 US. The cost per life of HPV DNA was 25 times more at $11,500 US. And the cost per life saved of pap smear was actually more than what HPV DNA testing would have actually cost. And in a very cost-sensitive healthcare situation like India has, to suggest that either HPV DNA or pap smear could be universally implemented is being extremely naive. Thank you.
Okay, Pramesh. You lost my support. How can you not like Michael Moore movies? But anyway, Ravi.
I'm Ravi Dugal from the Anusandhan Trust. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a mere sociologist. My question is that, I mean, why are we not also talking, while we do these clinical trials, why are we talking about greater transparency and social justice for the people who are part of the trials and so on? I think that's a very critical question that we need to also address in, when we do clinical trials and so on.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Before you, because you've already had your floor. Okay, Meena?
Yeah.
Hi, I have a question for Dr. Badwe. If VIA and pap smear are known in their efficacy, in their specificity or whatever, and all that you were doing is to check whether VIA can be conducted in rural India, what was the need to have a control arm of no screening? You test all women and you see whether it is viable or not. You can test it with a standard pap smear if you have to. But what was the need to have a no screening arm? I think that was highly unethical in your trial. And I don't think any of you all have addressed that. Well, I've just given that, oh, government of India is so great and international bodies have done this great thing. But well, you have to answer this very basic question. What is the need of just observing these women like that?
Your first statement that efficacy of VIA and pap smear is proven is wrong. It's false. The evidence that is required in medical practice to show that this is effective is a good, robust, randomized trial. Lest we will be doing 20 procedures which are done in the United States and withdrawn. Mammography in today's paper, withdrawn. Why is it withdrawn after 20 years of practice? The evidence came up that it is useless. It is harmful. It is exactly what I'm trying to tell you, that surrogate marker that something is detected does not necessarily mean the lives will be saved. I'll give you an example. I do a physical examination on 100 or 1,000 women walking on streets of, say, United States for breast examination. I'll pick up 2 cancers. Women are ostensibly normal. I increase the sensitivity by doing mammography, that number 2 will become 4. I do the sensitivity greater by doing MRI, that 4 will become 8. God forbid nothing should happen to these women if they were to die of vehicular accident, not diagnosed with cancer, and if I were to increase the sensitivity of detection by looking at, please don't misunderstand, from one end to the other, the number of such experiments have happened. The number of cancers are approximately 240 in 1,000 women. Increasing sensitivity does not mean we now know that change from physical versus physical plus mammography, a trial comparing increased sensitivity, does it save lives? 20 years follow-up, no saving of lives. But 30% excess detection done. Excess detection does not necessarily mean efficacy. If I were to walk through that little metal detector in an airport, if it were to detect past or present corrupt thought in human mind, I wonder who will be able to walk through it. I will not be able to walk through it. But we are not looking for a single corrupt thought. We are looking for somebody who can pick up AK-47 and kill. We are looking for a terrorist. We are looking for a cancer that will kill, not a non-cancer. Look at it some other, I will give you the ethics point of view. If increasing sensitivity does not save lives, but picks up more cancer, what does it mean? That increased sensitivity cancers are non-killer cancers. If I am a market force person, what am I selling as a doctor? I'm selling immortality, isn't it? I don't want my patients to die. Here is a set of individuals who will never die but have cancer under microscope. I want to treat only those. 10 years down the line, I will be looked upon as the most successful doctor. Anything that he treats never dies, but in the first place, they were not supposed to die. Market forces completely exploited. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we have to conclude. We are well beyond time, and before we wind up and Dr. Badwe has to leave, everyone has to leave, I just want to once more say that the talk, as I said, was provocative, and you succeeded in provocating. But I think, as Amar said, this is perhaps rare and historical that we have sat together for 2 hours, debated, discussed, deferred, and perhaps this is a good beginning. I now would like to call upon the organizers to would like to propose a vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would like to appreciate all the speakers, the discussants, and the chairperson for the handling of the issue so sensitively, so graciously, and so scientifically. And all the audience also, and for the points, especially the cultural and social diversities which have come up and the way they have been dealt with. On behalf of the GSMC MUHS UNESCO Bioethics Unit, it is my privilege to acknowledge and appreciate all the people who have contributed towards the organization of this program. We have an overwhelming response to this lecture, and at the outset I would like to apologize to all the audiences or some delegates who were inconvenienced due to the insufficient number of seats. I would like to thank Dr. Eric Subba for delivering the 8th Krishnaraj Memorial Lecture. May I invite Dr. Dhruv Mankad, Managing Trustee, Anusandhan Trust, to please come on the dais and felicitate Dr. Subba.